Hey everyone, getting ready for that CCSP exam.
You bet.
And let's face it, cloud security is a lot to handle.
It really is.
But no worries, today we're going deep on some key areas,
Mhm.
the things that really trip people up.
Yeah.
And hopefully by the end of this, you'll have some of those aha moments,
Yeah.
the kind that stick with you when you're sitting for the exam.
Absolutely. And we're going beyond just the surface level stuff. We'll dig into those practical insights that really make a difference. The things that separate those who just memorize facts from those who truly get how cloud security works.
I love that. So let's jump right in with performance and capacity monitoring. It might not be the most exciting topic, but trust me, this is foundational stuff. And it matters a lot for both cloud providers and their customers. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, think about it this way. Cloud providers are constantly juggling resources for tons of customers. All these customers are sharing the same infrastructure. It's like this high-stakes balancing act. They're constantly shifting things around behind the scenes to make sure everyone gets the performance they need without crashing the whole system. And this whole multi-tenancy model, where everyone's sharing the same resources, is a core part of cloud computing. It takes a lot of work behind the scenes to keep it all running smoothly.
Okay, so the cloud provider is doing their part. But what about us as cloud customers? What are the things we should be keeping an eye on to make sure our applications are performing the way they should?
It's like checking the vital signs of your cloud resources.
Yeah.
You absolutely have to monitor those core metrics. CPU usage, memory consumption, network traffic, and application response times. Those are your red flags or green lights that tell you if things are okay or if you need to make some adjustments.
Right, because nobody wants a slow website or application.
Yeah.
Now, I know cloud providers give us tools to track all of this, but I've heard memory monitoring can be a bit tricky. What's the deal with that?
Yeah. You've hit on a common pain point. Most cloud providers don't have a direct way to see memory usage inside your virtual machines. It's kind of like trying to listen through a wall. You need a way to get that information out. So a lot of times you'll have to install a little agent, like a little spy on your instances. And that agent reports back to the provider's monitoring system. It's an extra step, but it gives you that critical visibility into how your memory is doing.
Makes sense. And this all ties back to right-sizing our cloud resources, right?
Exactly.
We don't want to be stingy and hurt performance. But we also don't want to overspend on resources we're not using.
You nailed it. It's a constant balancing act. And thankfully, cloud providers give us a lot of flexibility. We can adjust our resources up or down as needed, but it's our job as cloud customers to monitor those performance metrics and find that sweet spot where we have optimal performance without breaking the bank.
And that's where those automated alerts come in, right?
Right.
It's like having a personal assistant for your cloud environment.
I couldn't agree more. This is proactive cloud management in action. You can set up alerts based on specific performance thresholds. So for example, if your CPU usage suddenly spikes or your response times slow down, you'll get a notification right away. It's like having a 247 watchdog for your cloud environment. It helps you stay ahead of those potential issues before they become major problems.
I guess speaking of 2047 weather, let's shift gears for a bit
Yeah.
and talk about the Security Operations Center, or the SOC as it's usually called. When I hear SOC, I picture this high-tech command center, with screens flashing and people running around. Is that a pretty accurate picture?
You're not far off. The SOC is really like the heart of an organization's cybersecurity program. And yeah, for many organizations, it does operate around the clock. Because as we all know, cyber threats never sleep. The SOC is that central command center that's responsible for protecting the organization's data and systems, from all those nasty things lurking out there in the digital world.
So break it down for us a little bit. What are the SOC's main responsibilities? What are they actually doing all day and all night?
Well, first and foremost, the SOC is a central monitoring hub. They're keeping an eye on all those security controls you have in place, firewalls, intrusion detection systems, the whole security arsenal. They're constantly analyzing logs, sifting through mountains of data, looking for any signs of suspicious activity.
And I'm guessing that's where SIEM comes in, Security Information and Event Management. Is that like their secret weapon?
You got it. SIEM is like the SOC's superpowered data cruncher. It gathers logs from all its different security tools, correlates the information, and helps the analysts spot those subtle patterns and anomalies that might point to a hidden threat. Without a SIEM, it would be like trying to find a needle in a haystack. But SIEM makes those needles light up like a Christmas tree.
Okay, so the SOC is monitoring, analyzing, and using SIEM to make sense of it all. What else is on their to-do list?
Well, the SOC is also the go-to point of contact for anyone who even suspects a security incident. It's like the cybersecurity 9/11. They're trained to triage incidents, figure out how serious they are, and then coordinate the response. to contain and neutralize the threat.
So if someone sees something suspicious, they say something to the SOC, and then those cybersecurity experts take over.
Exactly. It's all about having that central point of contact
Yeah.
to make sure there's a quick and coordinated response to any potential threats.
The SOC is like the front line, always watching and ready to jump in. But let's go back to performance monitoring for a second. We talked about those key metrics, but can you give us a real-world example of how this actually works, like in AWS?
Sure. Let's say you have an EC2 instance running in AWS. That's basically your virtual server in the cloud. AWS has this really handy monitoring dashboard where you can see all sorts of performance data for that instance. Things like CPU utilization over time, disk read and write activity and network traffic, both the volume of data and the number of packets. Gives you a great overview of how your instance is performing.
So you can tell pretty quickly if things are running smoothly or if there are any red flags.
Exactly. But here's the thing about memory monitoring. It often takes an extra step. You might need to install a little agent on your EC2 instance to gather those memory metrics and send them back to the AWS monitoring system.
Right, because AWS can't see that information directly by default. It's like they need a special key to unlock that data.
That's a great analogy. And once you have that memory data, you can see if your instance has too many resources or not enough. If memory usage is always low, you might be able to scale down to a smaller instance and save some money. But if memory usage is always high, you'll probably need to upgrade to a larger instance to avoid performance problems.
So it's all about finding that sweet spot, right? Not too big, not too small, just right. And that's where those automated alerts can really help out.
Absolutely. Let's say you want to be notified if the CPU on your EC2 instance goes above 80%. You can set up an alert to automatically send you an email or even run a script to fix the problem.
That's amazing. It really is like having your own cloud assistant always watching things and letting you know if something needs attention.
Exactly. It's all about being proactive and staying ahead of those potential issues.
All right, so we've talked about performance monitoring and how the SOC keeps things secure. Now let's bring ITIL back into the picture. I'm still trying to wrap my head around how those ITIL best practices actually connect to cloud security.
It's all about seeing how these different areas work together. ITIL gives you this framework of best practices that can help you secure your cloud environments more effectively. For example, let's look at incident management. ITIL gives you a structured way to deal with incidents from the moment you realize something's wrong, all the way through investigating, resolving, and documenting the incident.
So it's not just about putting out fires as they come up, but having a system in place to handle those security incidents. Does that make sense?
Exactly. And that's where the SOC comes in. They often play a big role in incident management because they're the first to know when something goes wrong. The SOC needs to follow procedures for logging, triaging, and escalating incidents to make sure things are handled quickly and efficiently. Having that ITIL framework can help them stay organized, especially when things get crazy.
It's like having a playbook for dealing with security incidents, which can be super helpful in those stressful situations.
Precisely. ITIL can also guide the SOC on communication and reporting during incidents. When you have a security incident, it's really important to keep everyone informed about what's happening, what's being done, and what the impact might be. ITIL offers a framework for effective communication during these times, making sure everyone's in the loop and there's no confusion.
Okay, so ITIL can help the SOC streamline incident management. What about other ITIL practices? How do those fit into cloud security?
Well, let's think about change management. One of ITIL's core ideas is managing changes to your IT systems in a controlled and documented way. This is especially important in cloud environments where things change really fast.
So it's not just about launching new servers or deploying applications whenever you feel like it. There's an actual process involved.
You need a process for figuring out the impact of changes before you make them, getting approval and documenting everything. This might seem like a lot of extra work, but it really helps reduce the risk of things going wrong, which is crucial for security and compliance.
That makes sense. And what about capacity and performance management? We talked about that from a cloud customer's perspective, but how does ITIL fit in?
ITIL has some great advice on how to plan, monitor, and manage the capacity and performance of your IT services. And this is a big deal for cloud security because if your systems are overloaded or slow, it can actually create security weaknesses.
So it's not just about making sure things run well for users. It's also about realizing that performance problems can open up your systems to security risks.
Exactly. If your systems are struggling to keep up, they're more vulnerable to attacks. Hackers will often go after those weak points, trying to get access to sensitive data or disrupt your services.
I never thought about it that way. It's like a chain reaction. Performance issues lead to security vulnerabilities, which can then turn into much bigger problems.
That's it. And that's why it's so important to look at security from all angles. It's not just about firewalls and intrusion detection systems. It's about understanding how everything in your IT environment works together and how it all affects your overall security.
This is really insightful. We're getting into some deep stuff here and uncovering all these interconnected concepts that are so important for cloud security.
I'm glad you're finding it helpful. And as you keep studying for that CCST exam, I really encourage you to keep making these connections. Keep asking those why questions. Think about how IDLE practices performance monitoring and the SOC all work together to make a strong and secure cloud environment.
It's definitely a lot to think about. But we're going to wrap things up after a quick message from our sponsor. When we come back, we'll summarize the key takeaways you need for the CCSP exam and leave you with one final thought-provoking question to think about. Don't go anywhere. All right, we're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive into cloud security. We covered a lot from performance monitoring and the SOC to ITIL and how it all ties into better security.
Yeah, it's amazing how it all comes together, right? All these different pieces are essential for securing cloud environments. It really shows how complex and constantly changing cloud security is.
For sure. So as we're finishing up, what's the main takeaway for our listeners getting ready for the CCSP exam? What should they really zero in on?
I think the most important thing is to go beyond memorizing facts. You really need to understand how different cloud security ideas and practices work together to make a secure and tough environment.
So it's not just about knowing the technical stuff. It's about understanding the bigger picture, right? The connections between performance security and IT operations as a whole.
Exactly. And as you study, try to relate those concepts to real-world examples, maybe even from your own job. That helps solidify your understanding and makes things easier to remember.
That's a great point. Putting things into practice can make a big difference.
Absolutely. Now, for a final thought, as you continue prepping for the CCSP, think about this. How is all this automation we're seeing in the cloud impacting the role of the SOC?
Ooh, that's a good one. It's like, are robots taking over, but for cybersecurity?
Haha, exactly. As cloud environments become more automated, the SOC has to adapt. They need new skills and tools to keep up with these increasingly complex and changing environments. It's not just about watching dashboards anymore. It's about understanding the automation behind everything, analyzing what those machine learning algorithms are telling us, and responding to threats in smarter ways.
That's a crucial point for anyone studying for the CCSP. The world of cloud security never stops moving, and those who keep learning and stay ahead will be the ones everyone wants to hire.
Couldn't agree more. To all those future CCSPs out there, good luck on your exam journey. You're clearly dedicated to mastering all this complex stuff, and it will absolutely pay off in your cloud security career.
Well said. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into cloud security. We had a great conversation. Hopefully you learned some valuable things to help you on your way to passing the CCSP. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and stay safe out there.